The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us this fine Thursday morning. There are, once again, still a few registrants I see that are battling to dial in. So if we can be patient for a little bit longer and just wait one more minute, I'll be able to start right then. Thank you. Morning again, everyone, and welcome to those that have just joined us. And thank you for definitely joining us in the second webinar of the series, HR in the Cloud. We had a great response from last week. Just some housekeeping rules. This session, we will be recording it. We will send a copy of this recording out to any of those that could not make the session and to those that could make the session. As always, please note that you'll be on mute throughout the session, but at any time, please ask questions using the question tab on your GoToWebinar navigation pane. So we have a lot to cover in a very short period of time, so I'm going to start getting cracking and move right into it. So what we're going to cover today is we're going to take a high-level overview in terms of the functionality and just relive what we did last week, what is actually housed within an acquisition software. And I'm going to take you live into the Deltic acquisition module. It's the one that I work with, just to give you a feel of what these systems look like, what capability you can get. And then I'm going to unpack what are the metrics that we should expect from these recruitment software. What sort of reports and information should they give us? What is the return on investment? And we're specifically looking at the software. So how do we analyze when it's the right time to buy software, when it's not the right time to buy software? What is the cost versus what is the spend? And we work with a very basic formula, basic calculation that you can use. A lot of our prospective clients have actually built that into their business cases. From there, I'll just give you a high-level overview of projected timelines, how long it actually takes to get these systems going and mobilized within your organization. I'll share some pricing models. So I'll explain exactly how different vendors work and actually share with you the pricing of the Deltek talent system. And then if there were any questions that were raised throughout the session, I will wait at the end and we will spend a few minutes just going through any questions that you might have. If I don't have enough time to get through all the questions, don't worry, I will address them one-on-one later on if I can't get through the session. So let's start with the functionality. As mentioned, for those that joined us in our last webinar, recruitment, it sort of needs to be that a very respectful and a versatile front end. So there's a lot of processes that go on internally, but from an external job seeker's perspective, they get to see this image that we're putting out there. And it's very important that it is easy to navigate. So recruitment software is not just investing in the software, it's also considering the impact that it's going to have on your website. Simple things like where to put your careers button. So I often find when I go onto company websites, I battle to find that careers button. It's either hidden in a submenu, or it's right at the bottom of the page. And if I'm battling to find it, and this is what I do for a living, can you imagine what the job seeker is going to do, especially when they're accessing your website from a smart device? There's a lot of research going around that says most people are accessing websites now from their cell phones. So it's important that your website is easy to navigate, that the careers page is funky, almost sexy, talks about who you are, what sort of culture that you're having. And just a tip, ideally, is that when you get onto your landing page, try and embed your jobs onto that landing page rather than creating a separate link that goes to another system or goes into something else, because the risk of losing a potential job seeker through to an additional click is quite high. So there's a lot. Often when we do our implementations, we pull in the company's marketing team, we pull in the web developers part of the project, because it's all fine and well having a fantastic system at the back end if your front end is not allowing them to come in to the actual system. So word of advice, if you are looking at putting a careers button, try and make it bold, actually on the menu itself, or at least have it as a sub-menu when we talk about the company. Then just to recap, what we should expect in these software platforms is the entire management of your recruitment process. So it works like the funnel. So ideally, we have a vacancy and we need to be able to distribute and publish that vacancy to as many different platforms as we can. Social media, possibly job boards, your intranet, your career site, possibly agencies, employee referral works very well, and get the word out there that you are hiring for these particular job roles. Some are obviously more expensive avenues than others, but certain of those avenues will give you a return on investment. Then the system should be able to collate all of those applications into one single database and be able to categorize where those CV applications came from, shortlist them, so that as a recruiter, I only have to deal with those that actually meet the minimum criteria, knowing that the others that don't meet have been regretted automatically by the system. And then I need to be able to actually schedule interviews via the system, request background checks, possibly even assessment providers, all of it ideally on the one single database so we can track this information and keep it in one central place. Once we've gone through the whole candidate management process, we would then want to extend the offer. And that's also negotiation that takes place. So we would like to track what we've offered, that the business has approved it, and ideally from there move on to the candidate accepting that offer. And once they've accepted it, it's then the last step, which is this welcome to the organization. We're so happy to have you on board. It's the onboarding process. So this is where we tie the knot on a very professional recruitment process. We make sure that all the documentation is readily available. We make sure that the business understands that this person is joining and in what capacity. We can even go so far as to send a video or a personal email from the CEO just acknowledging that this person is joining and that we look forward to them joining. And the last step of the onboarding process, obviously, is that internal notification for all the departments. For example, if IT needs to do certain things, we need to give them information in order to get the business prepared for the new hire, like a computer, an email address. The same goes for payroll. And if we have all of that sort of streamlined and in a process and in a workflow, it's very difficult for us now to drop the ball. So we can do more with less. And at the same time, the image that we're portraying to this job seeker is, wow, I'm so glad I made this right decision, that the risk of us losing them in that first 6 months is reduced. Not guaranteed, but it's definitely reduced. So before I take you into all the other components that we need to look at in terms of metrics and ROI, I want to give you a glimpse of what you can expect from a software system. So bear with me. I'm working with 2 screens here, so I'm going to try and move the one screen over so I don't have to go over. And I'm going to make this a bigger one so that we can actually see. So this particular system is one where the recruiter, I've logged in now as a recruiter, and we will be able to see a dashboard. We can see of anything that's happening. I can create my own little dashboard. And if there's anything that I'm needing to do, anything I haven't started or anything that I've started but not finished, the system will email me, but also very quickly put it as an alert on the top of the system. So I can just finish off something that I have not completed and then carry on with my workload. And the nice thing is as well, it will give me certain snippets into what's happening within my area of responsibility so that I can actually manage it accordingly. And as I said, all of this information you'd be able to actually move around, reallocate, do your dashboard accordingly. And what's also nice is it's able to keep a record and tracking of where my candidates are within the workspace. So a lot of recruitment managers like to use systems like this because it allows them to allocate the work evenly through their recruiters. At the back end of such a system like this, there's generally a workflow that is built in to say this is how we manage the recruitment process. You can have as many workflows as you want to because locations might differ, job levels might differ, but the idea is that when the recruiter comes into the system, all of that is already predefined. So they will come here, I will go to the recruiting, and I will say, I want to now create a vacancy. So either the hiring manager can do this and it goes through an approval process, or the recruiter can do it. It depends on the culture that you have within the organization. And simply we will come here, we'll say in this case it's for Silversoft, and you'll notice that the system is now building a workflow. If I now wanted to say, okay, fine, it's a temporary position, then the workflow would change. And that's how we allocate. That's how the system knows which way to go. And what it will do is it will understand exactly which jobs go with that. So if we say, let's see if there's anything under that. So we'll say there's a associate financial analyst. That's what I'm now wanting to hire for. We click continue. The system knows that's the workflow. And then it opens up the workflow for me and I can actually go through these steps. So the first one, and we try and build as much into the core data as possible so that we can actually pull it through. This is this request for a vacancy, or this internal recruitment form that generally gets circulated within the business that you can build onto the system. Isolate if it's a placement or a new position. And they will fill out this form. You'll notice the job ad is already pulled through, so I don't have to regurgitate and upload and attach particular information with that. I'd be able to come here and to say if I want to send it to an employee referral system or if I just want to email it through to the hiring manager. Once I've completed that form, the system will say, okay, fine, this is the screening option. Are you happy? Yes, I am. Are there any attachments that you preferably would like to actually send internally? So you only want to make it a short description of a job ad, but it's quite a detailed job description. You want to attach this. Or potentially this is a new role in the business and you have to motivate as to why this must be added onto the org structure. So when the business approves that we can recruit this position, they're actually approving the new role at the same time. And then the preview just allows us to see what that ad's going to look like and what we've done. And then once we've completed that, the system will take this particular vacancy and it will put it on this main screen of where we will actually manage our vacancies. And this is where the recruiter has got the ability to work with all the positions that they have. They can see the views, very similar to what a job board, how many people have actually applied. They can see their new CVs and they can see their candidates. And as I said before, at the top of that funnel, we want to be able to publish this job ad to as many places as we can. This is where when it's open, the recruiter has got the ability here to say, well, I want to share this to social media. I would like to share it as a status update on LinkedIn. I want to like it on Facebook and a Twitter page. So these are very powerful if you're trying to reduce your costs and your expenditure in recruitment, because LinkedIn job board can be quite costly. But if you've got a corporate LinkedIn page and you have got access to that corporate LinkedIn page, you could come here and you could say, I now want to share this job ad, share this link as a status feed onto that corporate site. And it will pull in your particular brand that you've got, the job ad, and you can then decide if you want to post it to specific groups or specific to individuals, and you would then share it. The same thing you would do with Facebook, and you could tweet it as well. The nice thing with this particular avenue is that the job seeker gets to see it while they're roaming on LinkedIn. They click on the link, they go immediately into the job advert. They don't have to go and click somewhere else and then view all jobs and then click somewhere else. It's a one click, they're there. So we do not lose these, most of them are passive on LinkedIn. The other option that recruiters have got is they can, if you work with job boards, you can cross-post it from here. So we work with LinkedIn, we work with Careers24, Career Junction, PNet, and quite a few others globally. And instead of having to go onto those sites and create the job advert, we just send it directly from here. And then job seekers, they apply directly on the system versus having to apply on the job board. We can do the same with being able to send it to a referral system. So we want our internal employees to nominate who they believe is suitable for this job. And if you've tried all of that and everything is exhausted and you know that the agencies can give you CVs, then you can actually send it directly to the agency. They will get an email that says, hey, we're hiring, please can you refer CVs? And when they refer CVs, they're actually referring it directly into the system. No more are we going to have a database of emails and a database from agencies and a database from this, because we want to avoid those duplications and to be able to track first CV in, and that one belongs to that particular job. I'm going to leave here quickly. I'm going to just move this across and I'm going to just show you what the external job seeker gets to see. So I'm pulling this one across here. I think I'm being quite smart with all of these things. This is, excuse the look and feel, but ideally this will have the company's look and feel with the logo at the top there, the branding on the side, and ultimately we like to actually put the jobs directly into that landing page. And these are all the jobs that the company is advertising for. You can even customize it to a certain extent and put the closing date in, just so that the job seeker is aware of how long this application's been going for. And if they're interested in anything, they can simply just click on the actual job title itself. And if they wanted to, they could willingly share it. You can see I was messing around with some colors and things like that, so you can make this job ad as fancy and smart as you want to with the right fonts. So you find the description, the requirements, and then what I can do is I can apply to this particular job. And this application process is sort of twofold. So the first one is I can create a new account, and I just typically put in my basic information. I'm just going to fill out the red fields here so that you can see what the application process looks at. I will tell you that I was referred to you by Facebook. I do not come from America. I come from South Africa. And I'm going to put in a fictitious email because I think I'm already registered on the system. No, I'm not a robot. I'm a human being. Select all images with the storefront. This is just something that they have to put in place to make sure that I'm not a robot. Continue. I don't want to save that. And then what will happen if everything is fine? The system verifies that I'm not already on the system, because we don't want the job seeker to go through this whole application process just to be told, sorry, your CV was submitted by an agency. So it's already realized I'm not on the system. And then it lets me know step by step what the recruitment process is going to be like. And at any point in time of that application process, I can actually stop. I can come back, I can save how far I am. But typically they can upload their CV. This CV application form is one that you can provide, or you can use our standard. Then once they've completed that, the system will ask them basic questions. Once that's done, I could put in a cover letter, or I can skip that step. I can add my attachments, because you might want a copy of my driver's license, qualifications, certain documents. And then I could even provide you with what my skills and competency levels are. And these are things that I've stipulated that I want from the job seeker. Some of our clients say they don't want all of that. They don't even want the cover letter, or some say it's very important for the cover letter because then we can see how they actually put the sentence construct together. Once he's happy with that, they preview it and they submit their CV. So that once the CV is submitted, I'm going to come back here. We'll go back to that main screen here. And this is where we can see all the CVs that have come through. And now we can get all the applications, everything has been screened in, the applicants are sent through CVs, and then we go into the second phase, which is now we're narrowing down that funnel, and we're actually now starting to manage the candidate through the whole recruitment process. So the first thing we like to do is just give you a quick summary, almost like an Excel spreadsheet, to say these are the people that have applied, this is where they've come from, this is what their screening criteria is. So if you were interested, you could actually click on that and you could see how they answered their questions. I have a high level. We extracted from the CV what their education is, what their experience is. If there were any attachments, I could do that. And then obviously their ethnicity status and their employment equity, so their gender and their white. Because often from here, we say, well, we needed someone that was ideally those two. So those are the ones now that we are going to move forward, and we're going to mark them as a particular candidate. So we move them from the shortlisted list back into the candidates. So now if I had to go back to that main screen where we're viewing the vacancies, you'll notice now that I have 3 CVs and I have 2 applicants. So those are the ones that I've really shortlisted. We can send them to the hiring managers. We can get the hiring managers to interact with the system. You can dictate how that needs to flow. But ideally, now we can actually manage them through the recruitment process. So I'd be able to come here, I'd open up the individual's details, see where they reside. You can always see the serial applicant. So if they've applied to more than one job and they're different statuses, I can see. I'd be able to actually see their CV and how they've put that all together. And if I wanted to, I could always send the CV on at this particular point to a hiring manager, even request feedback to say, hey, can you give me feedback in the next 14 days or 7 days? Because I need to know if I must, schedule interviews, especially if we are at different locations. And you could send them the interview form or the screening questionnaire, the cover letter. You could send them all the supporting documentation that was submitted initially with this particular CV. And once you've got confirmation that, okay, fine, this is the candidate you're wanting to work with, then from here, we're able to actually very quickly and very effectively come through and schedule an interview. So for example, schedule an interview, you just give the date, you give the times, you can actually upload a map to the office if that's what you're wanting. And then we work with, we've got a whole letter library in the system that works with different notifications, different letters. You can specify which is the right letter for this particular meeting, this particular interview, because you might have panel interviews, second interview, psychometric assessments. And if you're happy with this one, the system works actually with merge letters and will take the individual's personal information into that letter. So it avoids us having to actually manually now go through the system and go into our email, open it up and say, dear Kathryn, we would like to interview you. Please, can you bring along this? And then open up another one. Dear Nick, we would like to interview. Please, can you provide this? It saves a lot of time. And most of us work in Outlook, so you can take this calendar note or this interview time that you have scheduled and actually put it into Outlook. And from Outlook, you'll be able to very quickly reschedule, realign, invite a whole lot of participants, and just manage it from there. And the same functionality you can use for any meeting for as long as it takes within the recruitment process, because sometimes we meet with the individual a number of times. All you will do is you will adjust the letter that you're actually using to convey what the purpose of the meeting is. And then once you're happy and we've moved through that process, this is when we could actually extend the offer. So we could say we're happy, we want to hire, now we would like to extend the offer to the individual. And once that happens, the system says, well, that's great, but there's a certain task that you need to do. And if I go down here, you can see now I can physically click on that and I can extend an offer. I can select. So if I open that up, let me show you what that looks like. Once again, it works flow where I would actually define what is the offer. So what is the salary? What are the benefits? What are we doing? Once again, this page you can build yourself depending on what you offer your individuals. And then we can use an offer letter that is branded. So it takes the information that I've put here and it populates it into our offer letter, and then your terms and conditions can actually be an attachment to the back. Because what am I going to look at when you extend an offer? I'm going to look at the benefits and I'm going to look at the salary. I'm not really going to look at all the how much leave do you offer me. That comes second. So the first thing is, have you offered what I'm prepared to accept? If not, I'm not even going to look at the detail. So that's why we put this in the front page. It's the same reason why when it goes through a whole approval process, both internally and finally this person, this job seeker, this John Lately, they're going to see what you're going to offer them first. And the business wants to see, what are we offering? Am I approving that? Because they're not interested in the detail. Once we are happy with that, so I'm going to go cancel so I can get out of this page, and the offer has been extended and it's gone through the whole approval process. The system says, okay, fine, now it's been accepted. It's at this point that you are able to come and actually hire this particular candidate. And if I hire this candidate, the system will actually change this person from being an external job seeker to being an internal employee. And the first thing the system says is, well, what's the position? So we work very similar to an HRIS type so that the data stays in sync. What is the position code that you're sitting with at the moment? So we'll say that's the position code because that fits onto the org structure. So if you've got new roles, you can always create them in the system. If the position code's not there, it's at this point in time that you might say, well, it's fine, let's just create a new one, or hang 10, we better create it on our main system. Otherwise, our data is going to be completely out of sync and we're going to sit with a bit of a mess. If I'd followed through the offer process, it would have brought through the salary here. It also would have brought through the start date. So hire date is the date that I extend that offer was accepted. Start date is officially the date in which this person is joining. So it includes the notice period. So we say this person is officially going to be joining on the 2nd of April. I'm now going to hire the candidate. Just gives me a quick warning. Are you sure you want to take this action? Because remember, once hired, the employer cannot be moved out of the hire stage. So once you've decided this, the system has a whole lot of processes that it needs to update. I'm saying it's fine, I've got my offer is accepted, I now want to go and hire this particular candidate. And it's at this point in time that my whole onboarding process can take place. And this is very powerful. Often I find it's lacking in your typical recruitment software out there, but this is actually the crunch time. This is really where you start the talent management, the engagement process with this new individual. And if we drop the ball here, that whole professional recruitment process that we've had sometimes gets a bit tainted. And what we do here is we just make sure that the information that we've received is 100%. Then we can select the documents. And these documents that you have, for example, if I just go, I'm going to just scroll next so that you can see what the next screen looks like. It's probably going to give me a big red warning to say I haven't filled out certain fields. So let me just fill out this, letting everyone know what my age is, which is not a good thing. I think I filled out everything here. Then it's going to say, right, what are the documentation? So you can put them in bundles, but we work with dynamic forms. So those particular forms that are unique to yourself, you can actually build onto the system, send it to the individual, and they can complete it online and send it back to you, or at least have visibility to it, tell you that they've received it, and then obviously move through. So we can say we're interested in that form potentially. There's IT. That's the form that we're wanting. So it's those two forms that we're interested in actually sending through. Then that personal letter that I was chatting to you about that could be sent from the CEO, or just a normal welcoming letter. Maybe I want to know that the person's received it, can go through. And then we can send the business new hire notification. So we can send something through to IT to say this is what we're wanting to do. We maybe want to send a notification to payroll and tell them as well this is what's happening. And those letters are unique to the recipient that we've got. And then at the end of the day, we just to clinch off, when we go back to that dashboard, you know, where we started, where we can see everything, one of the components that we have on there is a widget to manage all the people that we've hired. And how far is that paperwork coming from? And we can print it, because we obviously have to print all the formal documentation. Some of us actually need the actual handwritten signature there. Or we can simply just look at the onboarding details and see, well, what have we received? This is the documentation. If I wanted to, I could actually then print the documentation that's coming through. From a job seeker's perspective, so now I'm going to show you something that really clinches the deal in terms of just that branding, is the new hire, this person that I've just joined. So if I make this a little bit bigger, they get their own particular portal. So right now I've hired Samira, I've logged in as her. And the first thing that she does when she gets logged in, because now she's a new hire, is she will be able to get the welcome letter that's here, all those helpful links. This is how to get to SharePoint. This is how to do leave. This is our performance process. This is our leave policy. This is this policy. All of those useful links can now be added. So she can immediately get inducted just in terms of the paperwork within the system. And this is just an example of something that we created just locally, where you can actually just take photographs of your team builds that you do, put them together in a PowerPoint presentation and give that through. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, but it's an immediate welcome and wow. This is a company that I'm really going to look forward to actually working with, because they really, really look after their staff very, very well. And then those tasks, sometimes we can't complete all of them before the person joins. That's what we do here. And we'll actually highlight to say, hey, listen, these are overdue. This is the due date. Just as a heads up, please, we're needing this information. Instead of having to do that whole email trail all the time, we can now get one system centrally to be able to manage that for us. So now I'm going to move back into the presentation to give you an idea. So I'm hoping now after that you sort of get an idea as to what these applicant tracking systems have got, the capability that they can do. What we're going to go into now is just to say, okay, fine, that's great, but what are the metrics that we can expect? So you get what we call metrics and ROI. So for me, metrics are deliverables that a recruitment software can provide you. And ROI, or return on investment, is understanding if that software you've chosen is in fact delivering and providing the business with that return on investment. And as I said before, they often do this exercise prior to purchasing a system, just to prove to the business that it's going to save time and it's going to save money. So let's start with the easier one of the two. Let's start with the metrics. So from a metrics perspective, what you can expect from software systems such as this is that it will be able to report on the South African diversity. So it'll be able to give you EE totals by candidate status, by vacancy report. This is very important because we obviously have certain quotas that we have to adhere to, but just sometimes those difficult jobs, we cannot find the right quota. These reports help us to say, here's how many people I've screened in terms of the race and the gender, and this is how many we interviewed, and this is how we got to that final allocation, just that we can prove that we have in fact tried to do everything, but ultimately that skill and that competency set is not lying within that particular gender or race group at this point. Another one that specifically the Deltek Talent System provides is hires. So here you can isolate what it cost you to hire, what were the agency fees, the flights, all of that type of thing. What was the quality of hire? So it's one thing to have a whole lot of CVs coming through, but what were the quality of those CVs like? And then we also highlight time to fill and time to hire. So government right now is really earnestly starting to look at systems like this because they're wanting to reduce their turnover, well, not their turnaround, their SLA time to both job seekers and intern to the business to about 150 days. Right now it's sitting a lot higher than that. I know private, we try and aim for 90-day turnaround time from the moment the vacancy is sent to the recruitment team to the moment someone's actually sitting and doing that particular job. So the time to fill is just looking at us in recruitment, how long it's taken us to fill that position. The time to hire is how long it's taken us to hire that position. Time to fill is from the moment the vacancy is created to the moment the bum was on the seat. Job seeker, it's also important for us to analyze the type of people that are applying for our jobs. Why are we regretting them? Is it the same thing over and over? Because if it is, let's relook at our recruitment process because we're hitting our head against the same brick wall. We need to be able to look at the detailed report for the job seeker and for the vacancy to just really understand what our database is doing. Vacancy activity is also very important. We need to be able to track everything. We need to be able to track the job. We need to be able to track the candidates. Sorry, I didn't get this regret letter. Oh, no, don't worry. Here on this date and this time, the regret letter was sent. Do you want me to resend it? Or an invite? Everything, including what the the job seeker has done is tracked on the system. And it also gives us an insight into the effectiveness of the recruiter, how long it's taking them to get through hiring people, and then also their productivity. So how many interviews are they having to do? How many screenings are they having to do? And this is one of those reports that I mentioned where the managers are looking at reallocating workflows, because even though this one particular person is working on 5 jobs and they're all working on 5, we know that there's almost 800 applicants per job because of this level that they're working with. So potentially they shouldn't be working with as many as the others. So we can really get smart with our workload. And then finally, but definitely not least, from a metric perspective, this is where the system should be able to give you the sources. So it should be able to tell you where you're getting your quality CVs from. It should be able to isolate social media separately, because this is potentially something new. We work with marketing to actually get our brand out there, and we rely very heavily on the strength of our followers and our brands to really get the applicants coming through. So we need to be able to feed back to say what we're doing, it's working, or we need to work on something else. And then obviously our effectiveness. So the sourcing channels that we are using, which one's working? And for that, we actually looked at the screened in to the hire ratio. So it's important that we don't just look and say, fantastic, we've got 1,000 CVs, that channel's working for us, if we didn't hire anyone. But another channel, we only had 10, but you know what, we hired 2. So which channel would you want to work with? The one that gives you less work but gives you a greater output, or the one that's greater work with the less output? So those are things that if a system is in place that handles the entire recruitment process, these are the metrics that you should expect can come from a platform such as this. These metrics are directly actually out of the Deltek talent system. And then we look at the ROI, the return on investment. So many times when we get told, okay, fine, what is the return on investment, like this cartoon gets said, we get a bit stumped. Thankfully, we've been doing this for quite a while, so I'm quite happy if anyone wants me later on to actually send you the Excel spreadsheet. There's a typical calculator that you can put in, and it actually calculates the time that you've spent, as well as, of course, the cost. And it looks at how much time on average we spend on certain elements of recruitment. But for now, I'm just going to give you a more high level, and let's look at building this table together and actually getting that final ROI. So in essence, there are 3 main components that we need to understand before we can do it. The one is company information. The second one is the administrative information. And if we use agencies, what are their fees? So for company information, it's important for us to understand the number of hires that we're expecting within the year, and also what the cost of those hires will be. For administrative information, there we're focusing more on the time that the recruiter spends in the recruitment process. And obviously agency fees, we need to predict the number of placements that we believe the agency is going to, or how many of these hires will we get agencies involved. So number of hires, how to work that out. If you're not sure, the best calculation I can provide you is to take your number of employees and actually times that by what you believe your attrition percentage is going to be. So say, for example, I've taken a company of 425 employees and I presume that the attrition was 7.5. I got to a total of 32 hires. So if my attrition is 7.5, then generally we will have 32 hires. And those are not new jobs. Those are just transfers and replacements. So hopefully it's more of a conservative number than an overestimated number. And then the cost of the hires, this is where you need to look at the average salary of the hire. And I know this is really difficult because you have junior jobs and you have senior jobs, and they all have different salary ranges. But generally just take the mean average. So I've just taken a thumb suck and I've said, okay, fine. So the average out of all of those 32 hires will be 300K per annum. Also look at the average cost of the recruiter. So what is the salary of this particular recruiter? And once again, those range, but you will be able to actually know that figure. And I've taken a figure of about 200K. And then understand what is the average number of applications that you receive per job. So I've taken a very considerate and conservative view at this and said we only received 50. I was with a client yesterday where they said they received 800. So I'm being very conservative because not all senior positions will you receive 800. So on average, hopefully we're not getting more than 50 a job. Once we've got that, we can then look at the recruiter time spent. So it's important for us that we can calculate the time spent on the admin activities. So what it's like to actually open up the CV and to screen it, to send them an email asking for more information, to possibly send email to referees, the candidates, etc. You know, all that information, that activities that doesn't really relate to anything, but it's important. And I've once again taken a very conservative approach, and I've estimated that it is at least about 15 minutes per application. So if I'm expecting 50 applications and I'm expecting 32 jobs, that means that I'm spending in total as 400 hours on just this administration of recruiting. Keep in mind that in a year, I think we only have about 415 hours. So now we can understand why the recruiters look like they do. And then number of placements. So you basically need to presume what percentage of those 32 vacancies would you possibly send to agencies. So I presumed about 16%, so it was 5 hires. And I presumed that an agency would charge me 15%. So that equated to 45,000 Rand per placement. And if I times that by the 5 that I'm expecting, I would probably be spending 225,000 per annum on agency fees, which I think is also quite conservative if I listen to all the figures that some of our clients or prospects have been spending. So I think it's quite clear that when we look at those numbers, we can understand why some of our recruiters look like this, where they're actually multitasking. They've got papers all over the place. They're scheduling interviews. They're looking at screening. They really are. And I've seen some companies that only have 1 or 2 recruiters. They don't have masses of recruitment teams. So it's important for us to understand how much time and money actually goes into the recruitment. That's more on the administrative side. And also understand that the more we push the envelope, the higher the burnout could possibly be. So I think let's summarize. Let's summarize and say, okay, fine. What we know is we've got 32 hires per year. The cost we know, it's about 50 each. The recruiter time spent is about 400 hours, and let's work out an average hourly rate of 760. So I took the 200K divided by 12, divided that by your typical month working days, which is 21.7, and I got a rate of 768 per hour. And we've worked out the number of agency fees will be about 225. So the total spend for the year that we would do in recruitment, if we take the time cost, we took the number of hires, in this case would be 532, just over half a bar for only 32 hires. The cost of the software, I'll come back to that one. For now, I'm going to leave you just hanging and waiting for a little bit with bated breath. Before I go into that, I thought, let's just say you've realized that half a bar is actually too much, regardless of the cost of the software. That's just no. That's we can reduce that considerably. So you've invested, you've bought a system. There's a few things that you need to take into consideration, and that obviously is the timelines. So generally, I'm finding that they can take anywhere from 2 weeks to 3 months, which is 12 weeks. The 2 weeks ones are those that are your more basic systems. So it's a case of it has an interface with your careers page and allows you just to send jobs ad hoc. And then everything after that is pretty much manual. So there's very little configuration that needs to take place. I think most of the time is actually spent on the look and feel of the website. When you go into more of a comprehensive system that can manage different ways of recruiting, and you can build your own forms and it can track the entire process of recruitment, then you start looking at a minimum of 6 weeks. If you've got all your data, we find the maximum it will be is about 3 months, and that includes training, purely because we have to work with the client to get some of their data. They don't have all the employee information, or it's inaccurate, or they don't have them linked to certain jobs, and we do that linking for them. And obviously a lot of the configuration and the process mapping gets taken to place. So if you are looking at investing in a system and you're wanting a more highly configurable one that handles the whole recruitment process, depending on the data that you have and depending on the resource and the time that you have to this project, bank on 6 weeks to 3 months. And generally, the provider will go at your pace. And at the beginning, especially here after the kickoff meeting, they will provide you with a project plan to say, these are the steps that we're going to take. This is when we expect the system to go live. This is when we expect training to take place. This is when we will need you. And then they'll touch base with you once a week to say how we're going, what's happening, are we on track? Just that you can start communicating with the business well in advance as to what's coming their way. And then the pricing models. So there are, as I've mentioned last week, there are so many providers out there. You've got large ERPs, you've got smaller local point solutions, and they all have their own unique pricing model. Some of them actually price on the number of recruiters and hiring managers. So regardless of the size of the organization, if you have got 15 recruiters and 65 hiring managers, they will price you for those. If you've got 2 recruiters, 5 hiring managers, they'll handle that. So for a bigger team, it can be quite costly because you're paying for more than you actually are in terms of the size of the company. And what I've found in those instances is that sometimes the clients will then say, no, we're only 3 recruiters when they're 15, and they double up of the licenses. And then you can't pull the metrics of efficiencies and effectiveness and productivity because we don't know who's done what because they're using each other's user accounts. And recruitment software is one of those systems that always has to stay open because that's, you've got someone dedicated doing that job at all times. So sharing licenses isn't the best way to go. Another thing that I've seen is providers go price on anticipated volume of hires per year. So I've anticipated you're doing 34 or 32. Experiences, those fluctuate each year. They're not necessarily accurate. And what happens is sometimes we penalize. So we presumed it was 32, and then there was a shift. There was a downtime, and we actually only hired 5, but we've had to pay as if we were doing 32. So what we're finding is most common practice, and what most of them are reverting to is pricing it on number of employees. Some vendors are lenient, so if you are you have blue collar workers, they will not charge you for those, even though you might hire them on that purely because they're not really going to be interacting as solidly as your white collar workers. Others, it's clean, it's simple. If you are 425 employees, well then you'll be paying for an annual license fee for 425 employees. And the pricing itself varies depending on the functionality that you have, and each year it changes. I find the vendors that do the more configurable, the full system, they relatively price the same. So for example, our pricing is slightly higher than one other, but it's 20% lower than another. But we're all in the same price range. Your ERP recruitment softwares obviously are quadruple the price because they're obviously linked to a much larger system. And then your more point solutions that just focus on getting your ads advertised on your job board, those are quite cheap. So it really depends on what you're wanting. It depends on the value that the return on investment that your business is going to get. Maybe you just need to advertise the jobs, everything else is fine, or maybe you need the whole process. So it's very important that you know what it is that's going to give you that return on investment with the business. So let's come back to the pricing of the actual software. So we've worked all of this out. This is where we ended off with the total spend for the year was 532,000. And I can't obviously quote a whole lot of vendors, so I know the Deltek recruitment module. So I'm going to leave you with that pricing, and the cost of that for about a 430 size company per year is 151,000. So if the cost of the software is 151 and we know that we spend just under half a bar, immediately in the first year, will be able to save 381,000 Rand. And that's including the option of using agencies. Many of the clients that have gone with us didn't have to use agencies, so their spend is even less. But we are living in a realistic world where you've got those really niche specialist job roles that only the agency can fill. So I don't think we can eradicate that cost completely. We can definitely bring it down because we can start using social media as a strategy. But for those more key niche positions, we need to budget to put in those fees that are in place. So in closing, I just want to leave you with this little cartoon and a few points. Is that is one of my favorite cartoons, actually. I often find we are so busy trying to just get through the work that we don't look up and consider an alternative to working smarter. There's that other cartoon that I often used to use where the guy's at war and he's being got arrows and everything going all over the place, and there's a sales rep trying to give him a machine gun. And he's saying, I'm too busy. I can't. I'm fighting a war, can't you see? Sometimes there are ways and means that we can do things better, that we can be more efficient. It doesn't have to get rid of the personal feel and the personal touch that we have within recruitment, but it definitely can aid us in just getting through the workload in a very professional and efficient manner. And I think we've proven with that ROI that this recruitment software won't only save you the time and money, but it provides you with a tool to leverage your employer brand, to attract the best talent way before your competitors, ideally making you the employer of choice. And I think recruitment software, because we obviously manage the whole talent management space, but it's definitely a good starting point to go with a system in the cloud and start with recruitment, because it doesn't require as intensive internal change management as, for example, introducing a performance management software to the entire business. It's a quick win, it's easy to get in, and it's the one application in which you can deliver that ROI in the first year. So thank you. I think we've gone through quite a lot in a very short period of time. I appreciate your time. Just as a reminder, we are going to be having a few webinars over the next few weeks. The next one is next week, where we're going to be talking about performance software. So if you haven't registered, please join us. I'll send the links out again when we send you the recording. The week after that, we will do learning management. I'm then going to get my partner company, Cura Compensation, who focus predominantly on compensation, and they will be handling that webinar. Thereafter, we will have Easter and relax a bit. And when we come back, we will then start off with the last two, which is the development webinar and the core HR data. The reason we've added core HR data in there is because you can see these demonstrations all look fantastic, but what's actually behind all of this? What content, what information do I need in order to make the front end that you've put in the demonstration look so fantastic and so good? And sometimes that's what trips us up, is that we buy the software and we realize, oh, I didn't know I needed to have all my competencies and skills aligned before I could use that functionality. So we really like to be very transparent and just highlight to everyone what is required, and that's how we were wrapping it up. I don't know if there are any questions. I think there are a few that have come through, but we've sort of run out of time at the moment. So I think one of the questions is could the onboarding component also talk to learning management, i.e. the induction training? So I can't speak for all the other vendors that offer onboarding. I can speak for Delta Talent. So yes, it can. But it will then talk immediately to our learning management system. So I'm not sure if our system at this point can integrate the induction to another learning management system, but I know that if you've got our learning management system together with the recruitment, you will be able to immediately put the person on the induction or the onboarding process that the training department does handle. Onboarding definitely seems to be the popular one. Another question that I've received is, can we just invest in the onboarding component? You can, but you will be paying for the full module. So it's not something that we just proportion from a price perspective. So it's probably in your best interest to use the full capability of the system and not just use another point solution for recruitment and then onboarding. So it becomes a bit tricky. And then it will add more, I think, to the administration of things that are coming through. Okay. I think if I look at my clock, I'm not too sure if we've run out of time. But from my side, thank you very, very much for joining me. I appreciate your time this morning. Good luck with tomorrow. I hope you have a fantastic weekend. If you are Cape Townians, it's going to rain tomorrow, so we're very excited, provided the southeaster stays at bay. And I look forward to meeting up with you guys next week, Thursday. Thank you.